Well, good afternoon and welcome to Live Impact News right here on 13 News Now Plus, 1 o'clock p.m. on April 28th. It is a Tuesday. It's the end of April, but it's still the beginning of the week. And as always, we are joined by the People's producer, Nia Campbell. Nia, what is new on this Tuesday?
Nothing's new. I'm very exhausted, though. I'm ready for Friday.
Okay, ready for Friday on a Tuesday. Meteorologist Evan Stewart is here with us as well. Are we okay with Friday anticipation on a Tuesday? You're setting yourself up for a long week.
I think so. I don't think it's ever too early to start thinking about the weekend.
Sometimes, have you guys ever had it be like sort of a Sunday morning and you're like, boy, I can't wait for next Friday?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you already start getting into it. Yeah. But what I have been saying is that I can't wait for Tuesday afternoon because I'm extremely excited about this episode of Live Impact News. We have the King of the United Kingdom here in the United States. King Charles, along with Queen Camilla, are in Washington, D.C. at the White House. It's King Charles' first state visit to the United States of America since he became the King of the U.K. Now, Queen Elizabeth, who has passed away, was made a state visit to the White House and President Donald Trump in 2019. But in terms of King Charles, this is his first visit. Now, this comes under the guise of a couple of different sort of competing layers of intrigue. There is the simple fact that President Donald Trump, since the war in Iran began, has been vocal in his desire for NATO countries to get involved in the war, and of course that includes the United Kingdom. Now, when Great Britain elected not to get involved in the war in Iran to President Trump's liking, President Trump was then vocally critical of Great Britain, including and especially of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. So that relationship between longtime allies, at least publicly, is in a little bit of a frosty spot. Now, when the king and queen come to visit, it's not a policy visit. Those types of things are, as far as we know, not likely to be discussed, or at least to be discussed in a way where change could come to certain policy. However, President Trump has expressed a deep admiration for the royal family. He has expressed a friendship with King Charles. And so the question is, could this state visit lead at least to a thawing out of the feelings of conflict or distance between Great Britain and the United States for those longtime allies to once again find common ground in their approach to international geopolitics? So that is something that is being looked out for on a visit that typically could come across as much more ceremonial. There does appear to be perhaps a tangible global impact at play here from this visit, but it all depends on where this goes. We have no idea if any of that will actually transpire, but it's important context for a story that we'll be in and out of all day today. Now, before we get all the way into that story, we're actually going to spend some time with meteorologist Evan Stewart to talk about that climate here in Hampton Roads. Evan.
Yeah, and we've got some clouds move in. For you're watching Taylor when she was on here a little bit earlier today, she was talking about this system that was going to move through. Looked like it was going to fall apart, and it did for the most part. It's produced a couple of sprinkles out there. This is the satellite and radar loop over the last 12 hours, and we had a pretty impressive line of showers, and you can see how it just pretty much fell apart as it worked its way eastward. Still, a few sprinkles out there. We're getting some ground reports from across the peninsula a little bit earlier that some of these sprinkles were making their way down towards the ground. And this is a look at live radar right now. And again, you can see how that line pretty much fell apart, still holding together just enough that I think we will see, maybe one or two leftover sprinkles, maybe through the Currituck Sound over towards Virginia Beach. When I was looking earlier, it didn't look like that there were any raindrops showing up on the camera lens there at the DQ at 17th and Atlantic. And we got a little bit of an onshore breeze there, as you can see out at the Virginia Beach oceanfront. And there are a few people out there, but they're not in shorts. At least it doesn't look like that person is in shorts. We definitely have some cooler weather. Temperatures right now across the area are on the cooler side right now. We're in the 60s. So we are looking at, these cooler temperatures as well. We've had those easterly winds. We'll back this out a little bit. 66 in Norfolk right now, 63 Virginia Beach. A little bit cooler up towards West Point, 58, 60 in Melfa, 64 in Franklin, 67 in Edenton. We should get up into the upper 60s to around 70 this afternoon. I think the clouds are going to hang tough into the afternoon. So we'll see more clouds and sunshine over the next few hours.
All right, sounds good. That oceanfront picture, it certainly looks chilly out there, no question about it. And I would say it feels chilly as well. It's not uncomfortable, but for the last few days of April, it definitely feels chilly. So that's what we're looking at for today. Now, going forward, a bit of a warm-up perhaps, though nothing too drastic.
Right, we're not looking at 80s and 90s, not
Right.
like we had earlier in the month when we set some record highs. We'll see the clouds clear out a little bit this evening and then into the day tomorrow, starting out in the 40s and 50s, and we should get up to the low 70s, but we'll also be tracking a chance at some showers and thunderstorms into the afternoon and evening. And we need to watch that closely because some of those could be on the strong side. So we're not expecting, widespread severe weather, but there could be some stronger thunderstorms in the mix. As a matter of fact, I can sort of break down for you, that tomorrow's severe weather outlook going in, we are under this level 1 risk for severe weather across the area. And what does that mean? That just means there's the possibility of a couple of stronger thunderstorms, some of which, I think the main threats will be gusty winds as we take a look at the tornado potential. That's low. The wind potential is low as well. But, we'll have to watch. No hail potential with this line. So, again, there is the possibility of maybe one or two of these thunderstorms could be on the strong side.
Okay, so we are looking at potential severe thunderstorms for Wednesday, and that comes at a time when, one, we have had some real drought conditions. I know there's been slight relief here in the past 5 or 6 days, but potential thunderstorms could go a long way towards alleviating those issues.
Yeah, it would certainly help. We are under a moderate to severe drought across the area with just to our west under the extreme drought there in the red. So that's back, it does include a little bit of Southampton County, Northampton County, North Carolina, back around Roanoke Rapids and right along the state line over towards Lake Gaston and areas out towards our west. So they are under an extreme drought. And, I know, we're getting to that strawberry picking season. I know some of the self-pick places, they'd like a little bit of rain too, with the strawberries and stuff.
Definitely. We did some stories on that last week. And, I also can't help but notice that outside of the drought conditions, which are severe in their own right, we also have been on a prolonged stretch here without any real severe weather events. I mean, it's been some time since we had anything that would qualify for maybe what we've seen in the Midwest and things like that.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of been unusual with this severe weather season is that a lot of it, was in the Midwest. And a lot of times you think of, getting into April and now we're getting into May coming up this week. You think about parts of the South and the Southeast seeing the severe weather, and it's been very quiet. It has been quiet a while since we've had any kind of severe weather in the forecast here in Hampton Roads.
And then, so we've got potential severe thunderstorms coming up middle of the week. We also have Wine Fest this weekend. How are we looking on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Saturday, Sunday, of course, those Wine Fest days.
Right. Well, it's really going to be a 50-50 weekend coming up. It looks like right now rain is likely on Saturday in the morning and maybe even into the afternoon. So I know, Wine Fest is going to go on rain or shine.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a great time. But yeah, it does look like a pretty good shot at some rain based on the forecast right now. On Saturday, clearing out on Sunday, mostly sunny and 67. So temperature-wise, it'll be perfect. It'll be nice and rosé, I guess you could say, in the 60s. But yeah, we are going to be tracking some of that rain on Saturday.
Okay. So Saturday morning is our main sort of focus in terms of rain. I know that I've been to a rainy Wine Fest before myself. I quite enjoyed it. As you said, Wine Fest will go on rain or shine, Town Point Park in Norfolk. But then Sunday looks like, other than maybe whatever impacts remain on the ground from that rain, Sunday could be a beautiful day there.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like right now.
All right, good to know. Naya, did you catch the rosé reference from Evan Stewart?
I did. I like
Very
that.
smooth. Very smooth, Evan. We love that. We should probably start incorporating more wine references in general into Live Impact News. Evan Stewart, you're the best. We appreciate you. 4 o'clock today, or are you still 5 and 6? 4 o'clock today.
4 o'clock today, yes.
Okay. You had a long run of those 5 and 6 p.m. shows last week.
Yeah, Tim was off, and this week, of course, Craig is off. So.
Yes. Lots of work for our meteorology team. But we appreciate you taking a little bit of time from that work to come in here and hang with us as always.
My pleasure.
Evan
as
Stewart.
always.
You can see him at 4 o'clock on 13 News Now. As for us here on Live Impact News, we're going to take a brief commercial break. When we get back, we've got a lot that happened right before our show that we want to go through. But first, a quick break. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. We were just talking weather with Evan Stewart. We're actually going to stay on weather for now because right before we came on air for our afternoon portion of Live Impact News, Governor Kemp from Georgia was giving a press conference on the wildfires that they are still dealing with in that part of the country. We talked about those drought conditions, especially Georgia and northern Florida, strongly impacted by those drought conditions and by wildfires that typically follow that sort of situation. So let's take a listen to Governor Kemp from Georgia right now.
For quite a long time, and that's okay. That's what we're here for, is to protect, to hold these fires and support these communities. And with that, Governor, we open it for questions? Yes, sir.
Governor, first off, what's your message to those who may have had to evacuate or just wondering when they may be able to return home or what they'll return home to?
Well, I'll just tell them that I feel better today than I did Sunday. And, you know, the rain we got, especially on the Highway 82 fire, was very helpful. And I know in our brief here on the Pineland fire, I had a great day on the ground yesterday, so we're making some headway. Not out of the woods yet, but my message to them would be, look, we are doing everything that we can to try to get people where they can get back to their homes, make sure they're protected, and as soon as we can do that, we will. I would just tell them also just to stay in touch with and heed to what the local, the sheriffs and the EMAs are telling them on the ground.
How is the strategy, and whether it's the governor or someone else, how has that strategy changed since last week? Obviously, there's a much more, it seems like, a defensive posture. How much has the strategy changed in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, so we look for those tactical breaks, whether it's weather, fuels, whether it's hitting, and so it's a much more aggressive strategy in the last couple of days, specifically at Highway 82. They did not receive rainfall over here at Pineland, but these crews were able to keep this fire in check for about 4 or 5 days and continue to mop up. And what they're doing now is they're getting closer and closer to that fire edge. So whether it's going through with dozers or conducting a strategic firing operation, they did that successfully yesterday evening to help bring that fire to what we call good dirt out of that peat. But we try to get as aggressive as we can when conditions allow us to do so. And right now we've had favorable weather. Today may not be as favorable, just looking at the weather. So, you know, that may change as good as the forecast can be, right? But if we have a tactical advantage, especially with the weather favorable, we'll be as aggressive as we possibly can be.
Governor, there's a lot of what's your response to community members that are seeing this online, that are having these concerns?
Well, first of all, it's unfortunate. It's not helpful. Second of all those people that are behind the keyboard, they should just come down and help volunteer and see what's happening on the ground and talk to the people like Marty and I have and the director have. I mean, we've been out there. We've been up in the helicopter with people that are dropping water. We've been on, we've been in the command center. We've gotten briefings. We've been on the line. We've been standing out there when they're back burning, literally with the fire between here and that light right there. So, like, if people are concerned, they should go talk to some of the locals on the ground. I mean, it's just like, we were talking on the way over here, the one fire that started because the guy was welding his gate at his farm, and a spark got out, created a fire. He tried to put it out. When he couldn't, I'm told he immediately called 911, did exactly what you should do, and that, they just couldn't get it contained. There's no conspiracy theory there. I mean, that is the facts of what happened on the ground. We're investigating everything else. But I would just tell, people that aren't conspiracy theorists that are out there that are looking for information, that is why it's critical for you to listen to, as Director Lamb said, your local emergency management folks, your local sheriff's office, your county commissioners, the managers that are here. I would just say the members of the General Assembly, every time I've been down here, they've been on the ground. They're talking. They're talking to people. They're helping communicate. They're helping put out, some of these rumors that are out there, and then certainly paying attention to the GEMA updates and then the emergency management updates that are going out.
And Governor, we've seen, you all talked about some of the resources that are coming back in. We're also seeing some of the fire departments from North Georgia sending some crews over there down here to also help out some of the local firefighters that might be weary after a week of straight of battling these intense flames. How crucial is just the interstate cooperation and the reinforcements from up north and other parts of the state that aren't as affected to come down here and help?
Well, Director Lamb just said it perfectly a minute ago, but I will reiterate, we cannot be thankful enough for all those assets that we're getting. Like the amount of people that are reaching out from bringing hydration, food, volunteer fire departments from as far as away in Georgia, way up in Fannin County, up in far north Georgia. I mean, there's been people calling from other states, other local jurisdictions. I know everybody I've talked to on the ground's been literally blown away. This is just how the fire community works. I told somebody last night, you're seeing the fabric of our state right now, where you have literally just everybody putting everything they have in to especially trying to save people's homes, whether they work for a state agency, whether they work for a local county or city, or whether they're a volunteer. It has been unreal. Makes me so proud.
What's the status of federal, individual assistance through FEMA? When can people expect to start?
Yeah, let me let Director Lamb talk to that.
So thank you for that question. It's concerning federal assistance. What I would tell everybody, and you heard me speak about this last week, is this is a process, and I would encourage everybody to think about this event as a two-part event. One is response, which is what we're in now. We're responding to a very active and dangerous fire. Mutual aid, or the major deck's going to fit over into what we call the recovery phase. We can't get to the recovery phase until we get through the response phase. So right now we're working through that process. We're actively engaged with the firefighting piece of this. As we move through that, do damage assessments, we will get into discussing the major deck, but it's still too early. What I will tell people is this: FEMA is embedded in our SOC. We're engaged with them every day. They are monitoring the situation, but when it comes to a major declaration, it's still too early in the process.
I will just add to that, though, I think for people, to the point of people trying to help out, I mean, the First Lady was talking about the Atlanta Braves that reached out wanting.
Okay, we come out of that press conference as they speak about, one, the widespread response that they have seen of people trying to help, and two, what's next as they try to recover from these from these wildfires. Now, we're going to take a brief commercial break. When we get back, we actually have a special guest joining us to talk about a long-term research study that they did based around fluoride in drinking water and the possible impacts on cognition. That's coming up right after this.
Mic check.
Okay, welcome back to Live Impact News here on 13 News Now Plus. Moving right along with our show, we welcome in our special guest for the day. We are lucky enough to have Dr. Rob Warren from the University of Minnesota here joining us. Dr. Warren, this is our first time meeting actually here over this digital platform. It's nice to meet you. We appreciate you taking a little bit of time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And mostly we're here to talk about your research on fluoride exposure and cognition and studies that you guys have done. One in particular study that you guys have done to try and find any potential links between these two things. I'm wondering, could we start here? Could you guys just describe how, or could you please just describe how you conducted your research in this on this topic?
Yeah, sure. The basic design is to take a nationally representative sample of young people and compare the adolescent cognition of those who were exposed to fluoride and those who were not. And by exposed, I mean at the recommended levels, not crazy extreme levels, but the levels recommended by the CDC. These large cohort studies where you follow the same people over time are relatively rare, but there are some in the United States that we were able to use. And what we found was that the kids who grew up in places where the community fluoridated the water had IQs that were no better or worse than kids who were not exposed to fluoride.
Okay, so no specific connection there. I mean, and again, I love that you emphasized, and I want to re-emphasize that we're talking about those communities where there are normal recommended fluoride levels, right? Recommended by the CDC.
Right.
This is not covering places where elevated and extreme fluoride levels were uncovered. This is for those normal areas. How does it relate to cognition?
Right.
And you
found no link. A lot of the evidence used to argue that there's a big effect on IQ draws on evidence from small communities in places like China and Iran, where for weird geological reasons, there's massive quantities of fluoride in the drinking water. And those kids tend to have lower IQs than kids in a neighboring village. But that's not really relevant for the public policy debate in the United States, where we're talking about a small amount compared to nothing.
And I'm wondering, you used IQ as the means through which to observe whether or not the fluoride had an impact. I'm wondering how you landed on IQ and what other possible options you guys had to use to measure the effect on cognition.
Sure. Well, so we've actually conducted two studies. One used good old-fashioned IQ scores. One used standardized test scores in high school, so math, reading, vocabulary. Same result. We landed on it because that's what the public policy claims are. I came at this agnostic about what we'd find, but I heard people making the claim that fluoride lowers IQ, and I wondered, is that true? And I dug into the evidence that people cite when they make that claim, and it really isn't relevant to American public policy debates. And so I asked, could we do better? And that's what generated this research. And
when it comes to sort of like, in general, you guys have shown that there is no link here. Have you found, were there any variables that you observed in terms of maybe people who should limit their fluoride exposure, whether it be pregnant women or anyone with any specific sort of physical issues? Was there any information on that came out of your research?
Yeah, basically, no. I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't want to say, if you are pregnant or if you have some medical condition, do what you want. That's not my place to make such recommendations. Our research pertains to the broader population. In general, it is not apparently the case that children who drink water that has been fluoridated at recommended levels have anything to fear in terms of their cognition or their IQ being worse.
And, you were your interest was piqued by observing this supposed negative link that came back to, or I guess even the negative impacts of fluoride, one that you have found no correlation with. I'm wondering, did you guys uncover any positive effects of fluoride exposure? Is there anything on that was included in your research?
Yeah, no, our work is just on the relationship with IQ because we wanted to investigate that public policy claim. But there is, I find there to be convincing and clear and overwhelming evidence that there are benefits for oral health, particularly children benefit from having fluoridated water, even in places where you get fluoride from other sources, toothpaste or supplements, things like that. It reduces the number of cavities. It reduces periodontal disease, and children suffer less and are able to concentrate in school, and they're healthier.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, what part of this research did you find most challenging?
The most challenging thing is combining all sorts of data. So to do this work, we needed archival data on when every community in America started to fluoridate the water. We needed to be able to link that to individuals' cognitive scores, whether it's IQ or test scores, and we needed to do that for a national sample. And so that was demanding. There's high data needs. The upside of that is that it produces an answer to the question that should drive public policy decisions. The downside is it's not perfect, like any scientific study.
What imperfections did you find?
Well, we're making some assumptions based on geography. So I assume that if you lived in a town that fluoridated the water, especially in the era before there were fluoridated toothpaste, we assume that you drank the water. We don't actually know how much water people drank. We don't know whether they drank bottled water. We just know that people in communities where the water is fluoridated don't do any better or worse in terms of IQ than people in other communities. But we don't measure how much fluoride is actually in people's bodies, which is that would be ideal. Although that raises a whole nother set of challenges because fluoride doesn't last in your body very long, so you would need frequent and you'd really need a lot of biological samples from people to understand how their fluoride levels change throughout the day and over a series of days.
And, I think my next question probably has a natural answer to it. I mean, we're all people, and you're studying how a certain additive impacts people. But I'm still going to ask, just in case it takes us, anywhere kind of
Sure.
unique, this obviously piqued your interest, enough so that you wanted to take a lot of time professionally to study it. And as we kind of have alluded to, it's obviously something that has piqued the public's interest and has been a point of interest in American society for some time now. Why do you think this topic in general draws so much attention?
Yeah, this topic has been hotly debated since 1945, when the first community in the United States started adding fluoride to the water. It For the first 20 years, the nature of the debate was that it was seen as potentially a communist plot to infiltrate America by poisoning the water. It actually made it into Dr. Strangelove, which was a classic 1960s movie. I think the interest comes from it being a public policy debate. Debates about, back when we debated the harms of cigarette smoking. Well, cigarette smoking was an individual choice. You could do it or not do it. Everybody needs water. And anybody in a urban or semi-urban area gets their drinking water from community sources. And so we are talking about the government. It might just be, local government manipulating what is an essential product. And so that gets people's interest.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. It combines a couple different layers there when it comes to, government intervention, health and fitness and wellness. So all of that does combine to make a very, very interesting topic. I'm wondering, have you found in sort of all of your research that you do, have you found that there's a through line in how you pick your subjects? And do you have any idea on where you'll go next? And will it be, will it have similarities to this?
It will. Almost all of my research is on how early life exposures to things like fluoride or lead or educational environments, how early life exposures and conditions shape long-term health and well-being, cognition, longevity, health. Childhood is an incredibly important point in the life course, and it sets the stage for how the rest of your life unfolds with respect to health. That's what got me into this, but I also study a variety of related topics. With respect to fluoride, I don't know what comes next.
When it comes to that through line that you look to draw over and over again in your research of the impacts of certain things in adolescence and how that affects long-term cognition, is there anything about the act of drawing that through line that you repeatedly try to do that you can kind of uncover for us that maybe we wouldn't have necessarily understood?
Yeah, I think broadly generalizing, we, believe it or not, underestimate how important childhood is in different sciences. If I spend a lot of time hanging out with Alzheimer's researchers, Alzheimer's disease is a terrible disease. It's a huge problem, very expensive, costly to people's lives, of course. I'm coming to believe, and I think there's growing evidence, that there are really important ways in which childhood conditions and exposures shape your risk of Alzheimer's disease. But when we think about Alzheimer's research and cures, we think about age 70 and beyond. We think the clock starts at age 70 and we need to intervene when people are already older and give them drugs. But I think there's far more promise in early prevention, in making sure that every kid has got a quality education and making sure that nobody's exposed to lead and making sure that people have access to healthy food and enriching environments. I think that has much more promise for curing long-term diseases, improving population health, delaying Alzheimer's disease, and so forth.
Yeah, that is very insightful. I mean, that preventative measures, preventative treatments, help solve the problem before it fully starts. It may be the way to go.
Yeah, it's difficult because people want to cure now because grandma has Alzheimer's disease or, I have cancer or whatever. But you sort of need to also think ahead a generation. What can we do now to prevent this problem for the next generation?
Yeah, no question about it. Dr. Warren, it's been wonderful to have you here. I'm wondering if there's anything you want to add before we let you go.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know if communities in your area are debating this. Should we continue to fluoridate the water? Should we stop doing it? I would hope that those discussions take place in light of the best scientific evidence, both on the pros and the cons. The pros being benefits for oral health, the cons being claims about things like damaging IQ. I hope they take the best scientific evidence and not rhetoric, political or otherwise, on either side of the political spectrum.
Well, very good. Hopefully this interview in some small way helps to continue to push that process, looking at the pros and the cons and everything that surrounds them contextually. Well, we really appreciate you coming on and joining us for a little bit here. And, hopefully at the conclusion of your next project, maybe we can talk to you again. But for the time being, thanks for spending a little time with us today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that is Dr. Warren from the University of Minnesota talking to us extensively about his research on the impacts of fluoride on cognition and the fact that ultimately his results found that there was no difference in changes in IQ based on fluoride exposure or non-exposure, and he's talking about exposure levels that are within regulation of the CDC, not places that have abnormally elevated fluoride levels, but places that have fluoride levels in the water that is within those bounds of regulation. His research has shown that kids in communities with that fluoride exposure have no difference in future IQ than those who are not in those communities. He also stated that the positive impacts of fluoride, specifically on oral health, are a factor as well. So that is Dr. Rob Warren's research. He's a professor of sociology at the University of Minnesota, joining us today to talk about that research on a topic that, like he said, has been hotly contested and debated here throughout the United States. So a pleasure for us to be able to have Dr. Warren on. Now, for the rest of Live Impact News, we're going to take a break. We have had sort of live boards at different times setting up for what looks like a part of King Charles State visit, and then different landscapes will kind of pop up. We have the U.S. Capitol on 2 of our different live boards, so we're still monitoring that, but we've got plenty more to cover in the meantime when we get back on Live Impact News. All right, we're back here in the studio, live Impact News. We're going to pull up one of our live channels that the event that's all set to begin here hasn't started in full, but you can sort of see the pregame of what's to come here as we expect this live feed to show Speaker Mike Johnson showing King Charles and Queen Camilla sort of around the Capitol building. And then later on at 2 p.m., or what is scheduled for 2 p.m., will be Speaker Mike Johnson, House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer, all expected to greet King Charles and meet for a leadership meeting in the Speaker's office. So all of that expected to come later today at 3 o'clock. Once we've already gone off air, King Charles will provide a joint address to Congress. So it's not just President Trump that King Charles is here meeting with and speaking with. It's also members of Congress, and members of Congress in a way that is actually quite involved with the leaders of the House and the Senate. Obviously scheduled to spend some real time with King Charles, who is over on his first state visit as King of the UK. So we're keeping an eye on that. We'll monitor it. We do want to get back out to Georgia. We did not get time for Governor Kemp and other officials to finish their press conference about what is a very serious situation in Georgia. I believe he was just about to talk about the Atlanta Braves reaching out to try to provide some assistance for families in need. So let's head out there right now.
It's just too early in the process.
I will just add to that, though, I think for people, to the point of people trying to help out, I mean, the First Lady was talking about the Atlanta Braves that reached out wanting to help. I was with some Norfolk Southern Railroad folks this morning. They're asking how they can help. I think people that are out there that are wanting to help, as Josh said, you can either go to the Georgia Forestry Commission's website, you can go to GEMA's website, or talk to your local EMA folks. I mean, these folks that lost their homes, a lot of them didn't have time to get anything out. I mean, they lost everything: clothes, food, just personal items that they need. So there is a need out there, and if people are wanting to help, there's great volunteer groups that are on the ground helping feed not only the firefighters but the local communities. And Josh mentioned the shelter, so I would reach out to your local EMAs and see what the need is, and they can help. If you just simply want to give people gift cards and let them go buy some clothes or the grocery store, things like that would be very helpful for people that are wanting to help.
Director Sabo, can you talk
Let me go right here.
Governor Kemp, mine's a little more lighthearted. I know you were able to visit some residents and their homes were completely destroyed, but I also saw that they were still wanting to help others. As a governor, how does it feel knowing that people are back in the state of Georgia, even the ones that have lost so much?
Like I said, it just speaks to the fabric of who we are. I mean, we got firefighters out there that have had their homes being threatened in the Highway 82 fire. They're running home, try to check on that, get it in good shape, and then they're going right back to the line to help their neighbor. It's incredible.
Sorry, Director Sabo, can you talk to me just about these two fires? Pineland, a little bit more contained. Highway 82, obviously, through over the weekend, and you said you got rain on Monday or Sunday. Can you talk to me about where these fires are at and how you guys are managing resources on the stages that they're at right now?
Yes, sir. So I'm going to start at Pineland first. Pineland is, once again, about 4 days of keeping it in its original footprint. As General Wilson said, we're starting to transition. I think using the National Guard example is a perfect example. Transition air resources down to ground resources. Air resources are outstanding for helping us stop a running wildfire. We will never completely put it out in these type of heavy fuels with air resources alone, right? So we're shifting more towards ground resources, calling engines in. Heard some coming in from New Jersey the other night. And so that's where Pineland's coming to. Now, we have a long way to go. Containment's actually a little bit higher on Highway 82 fire. They did a lot of good work last night. I don't think this was mentioned yet, but folks were allowed back in their homes off the 110 road, which is the west side of the fire. So continue to mop up and hold and be really aggressive. Go around structures, especially on the east side of the fire, Browntown Road. Any preparation they can do there. And once again, the name of the game is mopping up as fast as we possibly can. So that's ground resources, getting in there. That's what a lot of the hand crews are doing, hot shot crews. And so they're going to continue to get in there and push and threat. And at the same time, north of the fire, where it really does have a lot of room to grow, we're building contingency lines. And so we hope to never, ever use those. But that's the nice thing about a team is they can start looking 72, 96 hours out and bring in resources to help us there. So that we have contingency lines in place on the Pineland fire. We're working on contingency lines on the Highway 82 fire and just continue to mop up and put that black line on the map. And as I said before, once we start having that black line on the map, we start feeling a little bit better, but we got a long way to go.
Commissioner, I think you mentioned something about today was also going to be pretty challenging. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you're expecting today for both fires? And is there a risk that the Pineland fires can be jumping these fire rates?
Yes, there's always a risk. The atmosphere is a little bit more unstable today, and so the best way I can relate that to people is when you walk outside, you know, it's a nice day and you see like the little dust devils going around, you know, whirlwinds, whatever you call them. That's the sign of a really unstable atmosphere. And so that will get down into the fire level, especially where you have a lot of lines that kind of weave in and out and the winds can eddy. And so that will throw a spot over really quick. And so we have a little bit more unstable atmosphere today. And that creates those opportunities to get wind down to the ground level, create those little dust devils, for lack of a better term, and push fire right across the line. So, yes, sir, that's one of the concerns today for sure.
For those that lost everything, we talked to a person who had a 30-year auto insurance business. He says insurance is already, he had an auto business, the insurance is already giving him an issue saying, listen, what is going to be done to try and help those who have lost everything?
Well, that's why Insurance Commissioner John King's been on the ground down here too. I would refer people to the Office of Insurance Commissioner. They have their investigators down here if they're having trouble with their insurance companies. I mean, that is what they do. They have a team that's embedded down here, and that's part of the all of the above response. So I would refer them to them, and we'll try to help them all we can. Did you have something?
Yeah, Commissioner Sabo, when we talk about 23% containment, especially for the Pineland fire, a lot of people at home, they see that as a number, but can you explain for people what that really looks like when we have an increase in containment and how that helps, so people have a better understanding?
Happy to. As that number increases, our confidence of holding it in this footprint increases, right? That's probably the simplest way I can put it. 23% is still a pretty low percentage, but for the number of, for 32,000 acres, 23%, that's a lot of line. So a lot of good work being done. I tell you, I started getting more comfortable when we start hitting 90%, right? So we have a long way to go, and I just want to stress that, but once again, it's just a lot of hard work, long days, long nights, continue to patrol, spray water, and they will start working, say, 25 foot in, right? Like that's usually an industry standard as we get everything 25 foot in, and then they'll come back around and they'll try to get everything 50 foot in. And so we'll keep pinching it inwards to where things are far enough from the line. The other things they do, and we're being really proactive with it on the Highway 82 fire, is dead snags or trees that may have a cavity, up high that has fire in it. We're dropping those and falling those back into the black. So that way we don't have threat of trees, especially with the rain we received over there. The root systems are compromised, and so we've had a lot of wind, we've had a little bit of rain, so we're worried about trees coming over the line, so we're working on pushing those back into the fire itself so they don't fall.
All right, thank you all. That's all we have.
Okay, back here on Live Impact News, you can hear how involved some of the efforts to curb this issue and recover are from that second portion of that press conference that we played as drought conditions continue to engulf much of the East Coast, causing extra serious severe weather issues in Georgia and northern Florida. All right, for us here on Live Impact News, we're going to take a break. When we get back, plenty more events to cover. We have Democratic lawmakers speaking at a podium just earlier today. And, of course, we have King Charles in Washington, D.C. All that coming up next. Well, hello once again. Welcome back to Live Impact News. What we're going to do now is listen in as we had Democratic lawmakers speaking at the podium in Washington, D.C. earlier today. A number of topics at the forefront of our news week. We're also interested to hear if he has to say anything about the royal visit. But with plenty that happened this past weekend at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and going forward, we now hear from Democratic lawmakers with what typically this press conference is oftentimes sort of a summary of all that's going on in the world. So let's listen in and see what we get here from representatives in Washington.
Good morning. Honored to be back here with Vice Chair Ted Lieu. First, I want to say how grateful we are that everyone is safe after the shooting this weekend, and we're so thankful for the quick actions of the United States Secret Service and law enforcement to stop the gunman. Political violence is never acceptable and should always be condemned. Now, as investigations continue into the incident, I want to turn our attention to the House floor and Republicans' agenda this week. Right now, the American people are struggling, and they're getting crushed behind the weight of increased costs. Americans can't afford to fill up their gas tanks, and their kids going to school and going to work, and those costs driving up. They can't pay for groceries to feed their families, and healthcare has become so expensive they're skipping doctor's visits and treatments altogether. But rather than working with Democrats to tackle these pressing issues and actually help hardworking families, House Republicans are pushing bills to attack LGBTQ children, a farm bill that hurts our farmers and favors corporations, and a reconciliation bill that gives another $70 billion to ICE and Border Patrol so they can continue to harass lawful immigrants, detain children, and terrorize our communities. These taxpayer dollars could be used to improve Americans' lives by extending health care credits, reversing the GOP cuts to food assistance, and helping Americans afford rent. But it's clear Speaker Johnson and House Republicans don't have the priorities of Americans in mind. It doesn't have to be this way. Democrats have been calling on Republicans for over a year to join us on policies that drive down costs and prioritize Americans' costs that they're facing. And while Republicans continue their partisan go-it-alone approach, Democrats will continue using every tool at our disposal to improve the lives of hardworking families. Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. Political violence is never acceptable, and I'm grateful no one was injured with the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I know that some of you in this room were at that dinner, and I am sorry that you've now joined the growing list of Americans who have been affected by gun violence. I urge the Department of Justice to prosecute the shooter to the fullest extent of the law. FISA Section 702 is a big controversy right now in Congress, and I want the American people to understand why there is this controversy. It's because FISA Section 702 allows the FBI to spy on Americans. And many Democrats and some Republicans simply want a warrant requirement because the U.S. Constitution demands that you need warrants under the Fourth Amendment if you're going to spy on Americans. It is not a complicated or difficult concept. But there's another reason why this FISA reauthorization is having such problems. It's because of the FBI director himself. Kash Patel is a major obstacle to getting to a FISA deal, and it's because many members of Congress simply do not trust Kash Patel. Based on public reporting, it appears Kash Patel is a raging alcoholic. There's also videotape of him flying to the Olympics on taxpayers' dime and partying and drinking. There's also an article from New York Times that alleges that Kash Patel had his FBI agents query FBI databases to go after a New York Times reporter who wrote an unflattering story about how Patel was using taxpayers' money to fly his girlfriend around on private jets. So we can't trust Kash Patel, and if the administration removed Kash Patel, it would make FISA reauthorization, I believe, a much easier thing to do. And now I want to talk a little bit about the economy. Inflation, based on the last CPI report, skyrocketed. It was the largest month-to-month increase. It was 3.3% in a number of years. Gas prices are continuing to be very, very high. And what is Donald Trump focused on? Building a giant arch in Washington, D.C., and building a private ballroom with taxpayers' dollars at $400 million for a ballroom that 99% of Americans will never be able to access. This is really just for the elite. We urge Republicans and Donald Trump to focus on American people instead.
Questions? Michael?
You'll be happy, Mr. Chairman. My question this week is actually for the Vice Chair.
Love it. I love when we start out our meetings like this.
You and Mr. Obolnotti released an artificial intelligence bill that kind of would codify some of the recommendations from the task force in last Congress. I'm curious if any of them, what specific provisions are you most proud of? Are there any that you particularly fought to make it in there? And do you see a path forward this Congress, or is this something that the American people are going to have to wait for next Congress in the event that you all take the majority? Or is this something that you feel like could get through at least the House this Congress before the midterms?
Thank you for your question. Congressman Obernolte and I co-chaired the House Bipartisan Task Force on Artificial Intelligence last term. We introduced a bipartisan bill that implements a number of the recommendations. And this is a bill designed to pass this term. So it focuses on common sense provisions such as cracking down on AI fraud, on having the federal government follow their NIST risk management guidelines, on making sure we increase AI literacy and AI education. These are a lot of common sense provisions that we believe can pass this term. That is the goal of this piece of legislation.
Common sense piece of legislation, and I appreciate the Vice Chair's work with Representative Obernolte on it. Yeah. Feel free to follow Michael's lead. Riley?
I actually do have a follow-up on AI.
I love it. I love it.
Congressman Liu, can you talk a little bit about your advice to Democrats on how they should be talking about AI when they get questions from constituents, from voters? What do you think members of Congress should be messaging on and saying?
Sure. So both Democrats and Republicans can vote for the bill that Obernolte and I just introduced. The bill is bipartisan. It addresses common sense provisions. Separate from that, Leader Jeffries has created the AI Commission, and it is co-chaired by Josh Gottheimer, Valerie Fouché, and myself, and we're working on a framework to provide Leader Jeffries for when Democrats flip the House and gain control next term as to what Democrats would do. As far as we can tell, the Republican strategy so far has been to suppress AI legislation at the federal level, suppress it at the state level, and fail to do so, and then sell high-performance chips to China. That is not a strategy that helps America, and we're working on creating a framework. And so what we want to do is make sure that we continue to innovate in AI, but also have reasonable guardrails to make sure it doesn't harm Americans.
You may.
Thank you. I know there's been some trouble with House Republicans reauthorizing FISA this week, as you both kind of mentioned. If Republicans can't reach sort of a deal on their own, and they try to put forward another week or 2 week long FISA extension just to give more time to negotiate, is that something that Democrats would support, kind of as you allowed unanimous consent last time?
Look, 702 is an important national security priority for our country. We are willing to engage in conversations, but look, we had a window. I mean, part of what the exercise that we went through was assurances from the majority that they would give us the bill in advance, which you saw that they did post the text well in advance of the vote. Jim Himes and Jamie Raskin are ready to engage in conversations. At this point, Republican leadership hasn't engaged in those conversations. It's clear, based on the reforms that were implemented during the Biden administration, in order for FISA to get done, it has to be bipartisan. I just don't understand why Republicans can't figure that out and don't want to include the top Democrat on Intel and Judiciary. So we'll see what happens, but clearly Republicans are just wrapped around the axle right now, and their inability to govern is shaping the floor schedule as we speak.
If Kash Patel was removed, I would vote for another short-term extension of FISA so that we can come together for a bipartisan solution, as the chairman has said.
Speaker Johnson has brought up the idea of passing a different DHS funding bill than the one the Senate sent over. Is that something you can see Democrats supporting?
Well, we'll see what the details, are of this. He talks about drafting errors. When the Senate passed their bill unanimously, by the way, Speaker Johnson said clearly that that would come up in a matter of days. I don't know what the problem is. He hasn't identified to us what the issue is. It's clear that we should hold harmless TSA, FEMA, Coast Guard, United States Secret Service, CISA, those elements from our DHS discussions that we have reasonable policy disagreements with the administration on ICE and CBP. Democrats have been willing for over 60 days now to pass a bill like the Senate passed. I just don't understand why Speaker Johnson can't take yes for an answer and put this bill up. But we'll see what the quote-unquote drafting errors are that he mentions, and we'll view it on its merits. But I can't imagine right now. That would, again, have to go back to the Senate, so we're talking about more time delays.
Most Americans don't know much about FISA. Can you explain to the viewers at home what actually happens and what the risks are if there is a lapse?
It's clear, the Vice Chair, I'll ask to help me out here too, as his judiciary member. It is unquestioned that FISA authority is utilized to stamp out violent attacks and terror extremists who want to pose harm to the United States. It is authority that has been utilized by multiple presidents on both parties. There is a robust process that got even more burdensome to ensure protections for U.S. citizens as a result of the Biden-era reforms. But it is authority that allows the United States government to collect data on non-U.S. citizens who pose a danger to the United States. After rigorous checks along the way, that is fundamentally what it does. Over 60, 70%, depending on which administration you talk to, of the president's daily briefing is derived from these types of, from this information as source material. It is vital to our national security interest, and that's why Democrats have been at the table the entire time supporting its efforts. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be reformed, and that doesn't mean that we can't do a better process. The reforms have been positive, but there's more that we can do, and Jamie Raskin and Jim Himes have both articulated areas in which we can do more to protect U.S. Citizens' data when it is incidentally collected.
Chairman Aguilar is correct, and let me just add, FISA Section 702 primarily does two things. It allows the United States government to spy on suspected foreign terrorists. No one has a problem with that. It's the second thing FISA Section 702 does that many members of Congress have a problem with. It allows the FBI to spy on Americans. And we're simply asking for a warrant requirement when the FBI does that. Now, if it takes some time to get to a bipartisan solution, again, I would vote for a short-term extension if FBI Director Kash Patel was removed.
Max?
There was a letter this week led by Bernie Sanders to the...
All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're going to show you what looks like the start of that meeting between Mike Johnson, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, John Thune, and King Charles. This is just about to get started. They literally just sat down. We're going to take a commercial break. When we get back, we'll head out there straight away. Okay, we're back here on Live Impact News, and we were very briefly, before we went to commercial, we were in the room where that meeting looked all set to take place with, again, Mike Johnson, Hakeem Jeffries, John Thune, Chuck Schumer, King Charles, since it appears as though the camera has been kicked out of that room and has sort of been hanging out in the hallway here on what looks to be a semi-permanent basis. So I do not know that we are going to get access to the conversation that is had in that room, which they did sort of trick us a little bit. The way that it looked was that we were going to be able to sit in on that conversation. But you're seeing what I'm seeing, which is just sort of a marble wall there next to that room. Now, all of the live feeds sort of summaries that we have indicate an opportunity to potentially listen in, but it just does not appear to be the case. And there goes the shot altogether. So I guess we will not be listening in, but still interesting and of note that that is happening at all. Okay, that means that Nia Campbell and myself must confer in the studio here and make a decision on where to go next, and I think we do have a good idea of where we want to go. Earlier today, Congressman Ro Khanna out of California hosted a roundtable for Epstein survivors. Again, this is a Epstein survivors roundtable that took place earlier today. Now, in addition to the fact that the Epstein files and the case of Epstein and all involved has been very much in the headlines for years now, with that only heating up at times during 2026 and the second half of 2025. Obviously, that alone makes this newsworthy, but on today in particular, we have been talking quite a bit about King Charles. Well, King Charles's brother is former Prince Andrew. Former Prince Andrew, of course, was recently in the news because he and Peter Mandelson, the UK's former ambassador to Washington, were arrested within days of each other for their ties to late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and are under investigation for misconduct in public office. So again, arrested in the wake of their ties to Jeffrey Epstein and under investigation for misconduct in public office. Now, neither has been charged, but police have also not disclosed details on the questioning of the former prince, now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, after his titles were stripped, also in the wake of those connections to Epstein and other issues. But documents that were released by the United States government suggest both of them were close to Epstein and may have leaked sensitive information to him. The files also suggest, according to PBS.org, that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor passed confidential trade reports, among other documents, to Epstein when he was serving as the UK's trade envoy from 2001 to 2011. So, King Charles here in the United States. His brother, the former Prince Andrew, stripped of his titles, is under investigation for misconduct in public office, which relates back to his alleged ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Our next event is a roundtable with survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and the crimes that he allegedly perpetrated before this case came to fruition, before he was put into jail. So trying to, sort of draw the through line between some of the major headlines that we're covering today, and we will now head out to this roundtable for Jeffrey Epstein survivors.
Kind of both her stories touch on Trump and the former prince.
Yeah.
And as we still wait for that event to start, this is our recording from earlier today, and we started while they were in the midst of setup, so we're still trying to locate when exactly that begins. It looks like we have found the spot where Congressman Ro Khanna is starting the roundtable.
And I thought it would have been a incredible moment and statement to show that it doesn't matter how much wealth you have, how much power you have, no human being is dispensable, and that the survivors deserve justice. He unfortunately declined that request. I met with the British ambassador. The British ambassador has suggested that the King will acknowledge the Epstein survivors in his address to Congress today. I hope his flunkies don't take out the acknowledgement from his text, and I fully expect the King to be acknowledging the survivors and the Epstein survivors when he speaks to our nation at Congress this afternoon. But this roundtable is about recentering the survivors. They have shown such courage, such enormous guts to tell their stories over and over again, and to see that there's justice for people who abused young girls and in some cases trafficked and raped them. Twice, Sky and other family members and survivors came outside the Capitol, and their advocacy is what led to Thomas Massey and my ability to pass the Epstein Transparency Act. We've managed to release 3 million files. Many of the people in those files have serious allegations of abuse, but there still has not been a single investigation or prosecution in the United States. We need to make sure that the men who abused, raped, or trafficked these girls are facing investigations and prosecutions. Many other countries, Britain, Latvia, Norway, have seen investigations and prosecutions. We haven't had a single one. So this roundtable is about making that call. And then there's still 3 million files that remain hidden, that are in a cover-up, that the survivors want to see released. There was recently a lawsuit that Katie Fang has brought in under the Administrative Procedures Act, saying that the administration, the Justice Department, is in violation of the law, of the Epstein Transparency Act that passed overwhelmingly, and they need to release the files. Today is a call to release all of the remaining files and to begin the investigation and prosecution of the Epstein class. But most importantly, it is a dialogue with the survivors and all of their incredible leaders. Thank you to so many of the incredible leaders from women's groups and domestic violence groups and sexual assault groups, to have a real conversation about what needs to be done in this country to deal with sexual assault, to deal with the power differential that exists between rich and powerful men and those who they abuse, and what we need to do to move forward as a nation and as a world to use this awful Epstein saga to develop a more humane and just policy and more accountability, so these things don't happen again to more young girls in our country or around the world. With that, I want to turn it over to Sky Roberts. Sky, thank you for suggesting that we do this, and thank you for your and Amanda's participation.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. My name is Sky Roberts, and I am the younger brother of Virginia Roberts Giuffre. I want to begin by thanking Representative Rokana. Thank you for assisting in getting this put together. I think it's a really big day, especially given the moment with the King arriving in town, and obviously having the survivors here. It was just the year of Virginia's passing on Saturday last week, and we got to hold a beautiful vigil for her. But we're right back into advocacy work, and we're just steps away from where the King is currently at. I want to take a moment to share Virginia's story, because her story is not just hers. It represents so many others who never got the chance to be heard. When Virginia was just 16 years old, my father, who worked as a groundskeeper at Mar-a-Lago, helped her get a job there as a locker room attendant. That should have been a safe opportunity for a young girl. Instead, it became the entry point into a world of unimaginable abuse. That summer, Virginia was recruited at Mar-a-Lago by Ghislaine Maxwell and quickly pulled into orbit of Jeffrey Epstein. What followed was not just abuse by them, but by many powerful individuals, many of whom have still not been brought to justice. This is how trafficking works. Survivors are groomed. They are manipulated into believing they are complicit in their own abuse. They are isolated, controlled, and threatened. I remember one moment that has stayed with me forever, when Epstein handed Virginia a photo of me as a child, wearing my backpack on my way to elementary school. It wasn't just a picture, it was a message. a threat, a way to keep her silent by making her fear for the people she loved. Virginia was trafficked across countries, including to the United Kingdom, where she was abused by Prince Andrew, now former Prince Andrew. There's a difficult irony in all of this. Virginia was recruited from a property owned by Donald Trump and trafficked to a member of the British royal family. Yet today, survivors are here, sitting with members of Congress, still fighting to be heard, still pushing for real accountability, while many of the powerful figures connected to these systems remain just out of reach, unable to acknowledge survivors face to face. You would expect this to be a moment for the King to give a message to the world that he stands with survivors. We still can't get that from our own President of the United States. He continues to say hoax, victims, or whatever, and this is not about politics to us. This is a human issue, period. And that is why we're here today. We have an opportunity and a responsibility to set a different example for the next generation. Today, the reality is that many survivors of sexual assault do not come forward until around the age of 40. That delay is not a failure of survivors. It is a result of trauma, fear, and systems that have not made space for them to speak sooner. Yet, the statute of limitations continues to run, protecting predators while limiting survivors, allowing time itself to be used as a tool of silence and injustice. That is why legislation like Virginia's law is so critical, eliminating the statute of limitations for sexual abuse at the federal level so survivors can come forward when they are ready, not when the law forces them to. And we must do this in partnership with the incredible organizations here today. Thank you all so, so much. It's a pleasure to meet many, many of you. Many we've worked with you guys, including World We, who've provided so much support and a safe space for many of the survivors to come forward, and it would be a disservice not to mention you here today and how much you've done for us in the survivor community. So thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this conversation, but more importantly, I'm here to ensure that Virginia's story continues to drive action. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my wife, Amanda, to walk through SOAR, Virginia's law, and the concrete steps we can take together to move this forward.
My name is Amanda Roberts, and I am the sister-in-law of Virginia Roberts Giuffre. And I am in awe of this moment right here. It's always a reminder that it is her who should be sitting in this seat, that her courage, her tenacity, and her refusal to back down from systems who continue to abuse their power bring us here every single time. And it's also striking to see these different organizations and where they come from. Model Alliance, Right for Girls, Ultraviolet, World Without Exploitation, now Women's March. It shows you that there is a problem across the globe. It shows you that this Epstein case is not just about a singular event or abuse, that Jeffrey Epstein was not an anomaly, that unfortunately this is a reality that young women, girls, and men and boys face every single day of their lives. And that at this moment and this time, it is now time to do something about it legally, legislatively, and anyone in power deserves to pay the repercussions of their actions. I want to talk to you guys about SOAR. SOAR was Virginia's nonprofit. It was her baby and it was her dream. And 1 year after her passing, Sky and I get to announce that we will be the board members of SOAR, and we will actively be able to continue her legacy. It is an honor to sit with you all today, to know that this is just the beginning of a continued relationship of real work. I also want to talk about Virginia's law. That was another dream of hers. And it coincides with SOAR, because the questions Virginia asked always is, what happens now? After a survivor leaves sexual exploitation, domestic violence, what happens now? Who is there for them? What if I had an education? What if I had financial resources? What if I had mental health care? How could that have prolonged my life? And what if I had a system that worked for me? Laws that worked for me? And that is what we intend to continue to do with SOAR. We intend to build a nonprofit by survivors and for survivors alongside her survivor sisters. And this is just the beginning of her work. And I'm truly, truly honored to sit here with all of you to open this conversation with Rokana and many representatives who want to see real change. We have to begin to dissect the systematic abuse and failures that happened with the first reportings of the FBI. How was that mismanaged and missed? The deals that Acosta was given and how that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to continue to abuse girls for another 9 years with hundreds and hundreds of victims. This is a reality that survivors face every single day. It's why more reporting doesn't happen. So we have to start with legislation. We have to show on a legal level that they will pay those repercussions so that survivors can speak out in safety.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for those very powerful words, and thank you, Sky, for those powerful words. I know it's a very emotional moment, and I'm grateful to both of you. We'll now hear from another survivor of Epstein. Charlene, thank you for all the courage you've shown all these months and for being here. If you could share a few words.
Thank you, Ohana. Thank you for everybody and all of your help. My name is Charlene Rochard. I'm a survivor of trafficking. But before I ever understood that word, I was just a young woman trying to build a modeling career. I want to speak from that place because the way trafficking actually happens is very different from the way people imagine it. When I entered the modeling world, I was barely a teenager. I was ambitious, excited, and completely unprepared for the risks that came with traveling alone across the world. No one ever talked to me about trafficking, not my modeling agencies, not the adults around me who I assumed understood the industry better than I did. There were no protective measures, no conversations around red flags, no warnings about the kinds of people who target young women who travel internationally with no support system. I didn't know what grooming was. I didn't know what coercion looked like. I didn't know what opportunity could be used as a weapon. And that is exactly why I was vulnerable. Trafficking didn't start with violence. It started with access, people offering mentorship, people who promised exposure, travel, and introductions to powerful individuals. That kind of access is like currency when you're young and trying to succeed. You don't question it. In fact, you're taught to be grateful for all these opportunities. I was groomed and manipulated in plain sight, inside environments that looked legitimate: hotels, studios, photo shoots, industry events, and most during jobs that were framed as career building. I didn't recognize any of it as trafficking because no one had ever taught me what trafficking looked like. By the time the situation shifted into dependency and control, emotional, financial, and reputational, I was already entangled. And like many survivors, I didn't have the language to name what was happening. I thought I had made mistakes. I thought it was my fault. I thought I had put myself in these situations. That confusion is part of the system that is not accidental, and traffickers rely on this. People often talk about trafficking as something that happens in a moment, but the truth is the aftermath follows you far into adulthood. It affects your relationships, who you marry, your sense of safety, your ability to trust, your career, your mental health, and your financial stability. Recovery is not linear, it is lifelong. And the hardest part of knowing that so much of it could be prevented if the systems around me had been designated to protect young people instead of leaving them to navigate this danger alone. Trafficking is not random, it is structured, it is patterned, and it is preventable. I'm calling for legislation that reflects how trafficking actually works. Mandatory education and safety protocols for industries that employ young people, especially those who travel, including modeling, entertainment, and sports. Clear legal definitions of grooming, coercive control, so exploitation cannot be reframed as consent. Federal protections that eliminate loopholes created by varying state age of consent laws, especially when minors are transported across state lines. Stronger oversight of travel, model housing, and financial arrangements for minors and young adults working internationally. Pattern-based detection requirements for financial institutions, because trafficking leaves financial footprints long before a survivor can speak up. Accountability for individuals and institutions that knowingly or negligently enable trafficking environments. Right now, too much of trafficking happens under the table, hidden by secrecy, silence, and the assumption that if a young woman is traveling for work, she must be safe. That assumption is dangerous, it is wrong, and it's costing lives. What I hope to see are laws created that no one would have protected me. I need laws that protected me when I was a young model. Laws that ensure no girl, no model, no ambitious teenager traveling alone is left without guidance, oversight, or support. If we bring trafficking out of the shadows, if we close the gaps traffickers rely on, and if we legislate based on how exploitation actually unfolds, then we don't just respond to trafficking, we prevent it. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. That was really powerful and so many very thoughtful and practical suggestions that hopefully can become part of the conversation and legislation. I appreciate it. I want to now turn to Danny Bensky, another survivor of Epstein, and really grateful for your being here.
Thank you.
Okay, multiple speakers there, including family of Virginia Giuffre, speaking at that roundtable, passionate and emotional testimonies there that we're hearing as there continues to be a push for more attention and more action on everything surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and the people that he may have been involved in while perpetrating his alleged crimes. Now, what we are going to do is take a brief break here on Live Impact News. We're going to be right back with more live events, another pre-recorded press conference coming up right after this. We've got one of our live feeds. Looks like it's got something getting ready to turn up. We still have not heard from those congressional leaders meeting with King Charles. So for now, we'll take a brief commercial break. Okay, back here on Live Impact News. Thank you for sticking with us today on bit of a chilly, gloomy Tuesday here in Hampton Roads. Most of our live cameras show a lot of cloud coverage in the sky. It's not the warmest day of the week. It's still early in the week. It's a Tuesday, but we are trying to make sure that we keep our energy high and bring you each and every bit of live coverage that we can right here on 13 News Now Plus. Now, what we're going to go to today is officials testifying on Keir Starmer's appointment of Peter Mandelson as the United States ambassador. Now, again, we have come upon this situation where there are a number of through lines to things that we've been discussing today. King Charles III here in Washington, D.C., meeting with President Trump as well as other Congress people. This comes on the heels of what has been a semi-prolonged period, at least the course of the war in Iran, of more distant than usual relations between longtime allies, the United States and Great Britain. Now, this has come with President Donald Trump encouraging NATO allies, including Great Britain, to get involved in the war in Iran. Great Britain has not done so to the liking of President Donald Trump, as far as we can tell. And Keir Starmer has come under public criticism from Trump in the wake of that lack of involvement. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Now, we also talked about how King Charles being here, his brother, the former Prince Andrew, has been arrested and an investigation launched into the allegation of misconduct in public office. Now, in terms of that misconduct, police have not disclosed details of the questioning of the former prince, but documents released by the United States government suggest that both former Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson, the UK's former ambassador to Washington, were close to Jeffrey Epstein and may have leaked sensitive information to him. So I know I'm throwing a lot of names out there, and I hope that the connections are making sense. But now we are about to head to an event that ended earlier today. It was live just earlier today, where they are discussing Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and his appointment of Peter Mandelson to be the UK's ambassador to Washington, which obviously Peter Mandelson involved in an arrest that was similar to the arrest of former Prince Andrew, both in terms of investigation and allegation. So I'm hoping that this isn't coming out too complicated, but I want to try and create that contextual relevance between all of the things we're covering today. So here is debate over Mandelson being hired as U.S. ambassador, being appointed as U.S. ambassador by Keir Starmer. Let's take a listen.
Sir Philip Barton. Thank you very much for coming.
Welcome.
You've been in front of the committee a few times now, and when you were permanent Undersecretary at the Foreign Office, it's nice to see you. I imagine that you thought one of the benefits of retirement was that you weren't going to see us again.
I'd like to be able to say, Joe, it's nice to be back. I'm not sure that's entirely honest, but anyway, I might be accused of misleading you.
But I think the thing to do is to remind you that you're no longer a civil servant. So I suppose the first question is you did have eight months left on your contract before you left. So why did you leave?
I'll be honest and open with you, and I'm no longer a civil servant. It wasn't my choice to leave at that point, Chair, and I would have preferred to see out my tenure. But after what I think was a very successful transition to the Labour team in the FCDO, David Lammy wanted to make a change and told me that, and told me he wanted somebody who would lead the department over the years ahead and carry out a major transformation programme. So I agreed to leave, and just to finish my thought,
major transformation programme
of the department
means what?
Well,
means 25% cuts in the staff.
That at the time wasn't obviously known because there hadn't been the spending review, Chair. But it's not that unusual. Just to finish my thoughts on this, for a permanent secretary to change, following a change of party of government. So I agreed to step down in January of last year.
Okay. I know that you were really only properly involved in the process for the appointment of Peter Mandelson for a very short time. So I think probably basically December to mid-January. But can I just take you back to a few months prior to that? Before Donald Trump was elected president, we've got Karen Pierce, who's the ambassador in the United States, a very experienced ambassador, popular with the Biden team and with the Trump team as well. We've got an internal candidate who's been there's been a process for getting a replacement for Karen Pierce when she steps down, I believe.
So, as I think is clear from Lord Case's advice to the Prime Minister,
yes,
revealed in the papers given to the humble address, the last government decided in the first part of 2024 to hold an internal competition for to find a replacement for Dame Karen, and that individual was recommended at the end of that process, but in the end it wasn't taken forward because the general election was called and the appointment process was frozen under the rules that apply on significant decisions during an election period. So it was.
Oh, I see. I didn't realise it was pre-election. Right.
It was before the election.
Okay, cool. So let's go to late summer, early September. What discussions were taking place about an alternative candidate then?
I wasn't involved in any discussions at that point.
Right, and then 2 months later, we have Peter Mandelson announced as ambassador to the United States. Were you? I mean, at what stage were you involved in any discussions?
Yeah, no, good question, Jay. Look, I was first involved when I was in mid-December told of the Prime Minister's decision to make a political appointment as ambassador, and that political appointment was Peter Mandelson. So that was when I was first involved. It was, if I recall right, the 15th of December, so the beginning of the week that ended with his announcement.
It takes 90 seconds for this NASA-engineered AC cool down your room.
And then from the first tranche of the humble address papers, we've seen that between November the 11th and December the 11th, the Prime Minister's PPS and Private Secretary for the Foreign Office give advice. We see the then Cabinet Secretary, Sir Simon Case, give his advice, and we see the due diligence carried out by the Cabinet Office, but we don't see advice from you. I mean, it may be for members of the public. That seems surprising that you're not... That, you know, were you ever asked your opinion about appointing Peter Mandelson as ambassador? I mean, you were in charge of the Foreign Office.
The first I was aware of the decision was when I was told on the 15th of December. The first I was aware of the advice that had gone to the Prime Minister, or indeed that it was being formulated, was when I read it in the humble address release papers. I wasn't involved. I wasn't told a decision was coming.
Would you have expected to?
I think it is, well, I think two things on it. I think one is, on the face of it, it is reasonable for the head of the Foreign Office to be involved in thinking around what is our major top bilateral ambassador post. On the other hand, given clearly the Prime Minister was deciding to make a political appointment, I think it is also reasonable that civil servants would not be directly involved in discussions around what is a political appointment, because in the end that is a matter for elected politicians, and I can also see the sensitivity. So I'm a bit conflicted. I mean, clearly, I think ideally you want to have a situation where there is a tight and small circle of people who can be consulted on a big decision like this on a basis of trust. But I can also see that in the end it was a political matter. And I suspect, I have no knowledge of this, was discussed in political circles at the top of the government.
In a circle of trust, do you think you'd have a place?
Look, not in a political conversation, no. But in the end, this is an appointment to the most senior job in our foreign service. I was head of the diplomatic service, so I think it is possible, without asking me as a civil servant or any head of the diplomatic service, I think it is possible for them to be involved in a conversation, for example, around what are the requirements? What does the UK need in the period ahead, and that sort of thing. Even if that isn't, you're not then involved in the absolute decision-making discussions around individuals who are politicians, because it's a political appointment.
John.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just follow up one or two of the questions from the Chair? You said that the process had been underway for an internal competition, but come the general election, it was frozen. Once the new government had been elected, was the process not then recommenced?
Well, I wasn't involved, as I said, so I don't know whether that was considered very much. Obviously, you have seen the then Cabinet Secretary's advice on that, and that's all I know about it, is that advice.
The Foreign Office must have been continuing to look at potential candidates to replace Karen Pierce.
The view Karen Pierce had basically been agreed formally as.
Okay, welcome back out to Live Impact News. We come out of that testimony about Keir Starmer appointing a ambassador to the United States in Peter Mandelson that has since been arrested and under investigation, and has not been charged, but has been arrested and under investigation due to potential misconduct in public office. Now, Mandelson also with reported ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So we actually come out of that now because we have multiple live events going on. First, what we have is the acknowledgement that members of Congress have started to gather in anticipation of King Charles speaking to Congress, addressing Congress. But we also have a live press conference happening in Philadelphia in the wake of the fact that the Phillies have fired their general manager. The Philadelphia Phillies, 9-19 on the year after spending the last half decade as one of the most successful teams in Major League Baseball, and they have fired their manager. So should we take that live here, Naya, or do we need to break first?
Break first.
Okay, break first, and then we'll take the press conference live in Philadelphia. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News, where we're going to go live out to Philadelphia as a press conference ongoing after the manager of the Phillies, Rob Thompson, was fired. The Phillies have now lost some 9 out of 10 just about. I'm trying to add up their loss column. They also have been to the playoffs 4 straight years, including a World Series appearance just a few years ago in 2022. They're 9-19 this season, however. Let's listen in live in the wake of the firing of their manager.
Morning, it was apparent from his perspective that he wanted to take time with his family,
And he's paid for, and it wasn't because of pay, it wasn't because he's paid through the next year, but he just felt that he wanted at this point to be a father first and foremost. And so that's what he had decided.
Okay, let's go to Cole in the middle.
Dave, I know in the offseason, Don said that his managerial days were likely behind him. What was that deliberation and dialogue like with Don, and was there any pushback from him?
Well, so what we did is, I talked to Alex. I had a staff meeting planned all along. When I say staff meeting, some of you've observed we've had some of our scouts in town, our trusted lieutenants, since last Friday. Joined in Atlanta. They're staying through the San Francisco series. I had people in the front office that I had already asked to be part of that meeting, mostly assistant general managers, but different perspectives. And really the reason I asked those guys to come into Atlanta is I said, I want to check myself as much. We have not played very well. Is this the type of club we are? Is this us? I mean, realistically, we haven't played well in any part of it. Falls on my responsibility, all of our responsibilities, I'll take it. But I said I'd like to hear some other voices. You watch other clubs play. You watch how they go about their business, the talent that's out there. We talked. We had planned on getting together Monday afternoon, which we did at 1 o'clock. Those guys, along with the front office staff, and we talked about a lot of different things. How the club was playing. Alex wasn't going to take the job at that point. Should we still make a change? What other alternatives we should be? And I came to the final conclusion that we were going to make a change. I think it was the best for the club, that the ideal person to step in at that point. And you at this time of year, unless you would hire somebody like an Alex Cora, you're going to hire an interim because otherwise you need to go through an interview process. And so at that point, we agreed that the best person for that job would be Don. And I didn't know how he would respond, and I called him up and asked him I'd like to decide to make a change. You're the first person that has come to the mind is from an interim perspective in that regard, and I'm asking you if you would take the job. And he said I'll do that for the organization for sure, and I'll do it with. I said, are you okay with it, full speed? He said, yes, I am. I'm ready to tackle it. I'll tackle it full speed. I'm ready to go, and so that's how the conversation went.
Okay, let's go to Dan in the middle.
The win-loss record is obviously the final arbiter of the decision, but what would you like to see more from Rob? Is there something you feel like he could have done to change this around?
I'm just going to leave it. I mean, Rob Thompson has done a good job for us, and I'm not going to ask anything more in that. He's done a fine job, and he has his style, he has his methods, he has his ways. Right now, I just think this group here needed a different voice. It just wasn't working, and I'm not putting it all on his back by any means, and I told him that, and we hugged in a very open conversation this morning. But we'll leave it at that for him.
Just to piggyback on that last question, I mean, when Don was hired here, he said he had no interest in managing again. I don't have the energy for that anymore. I mean, do you feel something's changed? Is he doing this out of obligation? Does you feel like he's really...
Well, probably when he came on board, that maybe was his thought. I didn't think we'd be 9-19 either, so we weren't thinking of him managing at that point. But I've seen him around here. He has plenty of energy. Now, normally when you're talking about, if you were talking about managing, you'd be talking about the long term, and I did not ask him to manage the long term. I asked him to manage this season, and who knows what goes beyond this year. But I think he has plenty of energy, and he had not planned on managing. But I think, first of all, I asked him to do it, and he's part of the organization, just like when I asked Dusty Wathen today when we called him, and it was Don's decision that he'd like him as his bench coach, and he said, Dave, I'm part of this organization. I'll do anything you want me to do. I said, we'd like you to be the bench coach, but if you want to be the bench coach, and he said, no, I'm ready to do it. And that's how Don responded, and we're not asking him at this point to manage for 5 years. I'd like him manage us successfully the rest of this season, and I think he has enough energy. In fact, I'm sure he has enough energy. I've watched him chase his 11-year-old son around plenty and play ball with him and what he brings to the ballpark every day, so I'm sure he has that.
Dave, was there consideration to making any other changes to the coaching staff, subtractions, et cetera?
There was not. And basically when I talked to Don, I asked him how he felt about our staff. Because if he had a strong feeling, since he was stepping in, is there any other changes he wanted to make? He said, no, I like our staff. I think it's good. He said, we knew we needed a bench coach, how we would go about that. I said, you think about that. He called me back later in the day and decided this is what he wanted to do and to promote AC, who was very deserving to be our third base coach. But I asked him, is there any other changes you want to make? And he said, no, I like our staff. I'm ready to work with them and would like the opportunity to do so. So I said, okay, let's go for it.
Also, the last 4 years or so, there's been a lot of continuity here in terms of everything, right? Roster, staff, et cetera. After going through a period of such continuity, do you think a change like this resonates even more, being that, it's the manager and it's a big shakeup?
Well, I can't say it resonates more because I think anytime you make changes of this magnitude, it resonates a lot, no matter when you do it. Rob Thompson's very well respected in the clubhouse. I know that. The players like him, and deservedly so, and they've accomplished a lot together. But I can't say maybe a little more because they know him better, because they've been together for a long time period. But I think anytime you make a move of this sort, it's a big change, and I think it resonates a lot inside a clubhouse.
Dave, coming into this season, obviously championship goals, it has been here for the last 4 or 5 years. After 30 or so games and getting a chance to reflect on this first month or so of the season, do you think those are still realistic expectations as with this roster?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we won 90, 95, 96 games. And I know people say, it's not age that has caught up to us. People I see right now, our guys are not aged out by any means. Some of the guys that aren't even our more veteran guys aren't having a good start to the season. I mean, it's just, that would be an inappropriate statement to me. In fact, some of the guys they're having the better seasons of anybody. But if we play the way we are playing now, we're not. But I do think we're better than this, and that's when I asked our guys to come in and talked about it. And do we feel that way? Do you feel that? And unanimously, the feeling was we're a much better club than this. We watched the other clubs play around baseball. This club is I don't want to say as talented as most. We just have not played that way. So if we don't play that way, we won't. We have to play better in every way. Do I think we can play better? I hope so. If not, then we'll all have made a mistake. And I want to say all, not yourselves. I'm talking about us.
Dave, the roster has underperformed. You've acknowledged that in Wrigley the other day. Do you have any regrets about the construction of the roster, maybe the approach over the winter? You mentioned not having a cleanup hitter the other day, things like that.
Well, when I was asked, we didn't clean it. Nobody's performed as a cleanup hitter. We've had people that have performed in the past as cleanup hitters, so they're not doing that right now. So no, I don't have any regrets. I mean, if we play this way the rest of the year, I'll have a lot of regrets at the end of the year. But I think we're a lot better than this. And I mean, I think it's one of those. I've always said you can always be better. If we win 96 games, you can be better than next year. There's no perfect club. I think we have a good club. I mean, I don't know that anybody
Okay, so the Phillies have let go of their manager. This comes not long after the Boston Red Sox fired Alex Cora, their manager, who won a World Series for that team in 2018. The Phillies 9-19, multiple players on their team that played for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic this summer, and a tough stretch for Philly sports here. The Sixers are down 3-1 to the Celtics. The Flyers were up 3-0 on the Penguins. Now that's down to 3-2. The Phillies are 9-19. They just let go of their manager. And the Eagles are looking at an A.J. Brown trade, though they may have found some wide receiver help in the draft. So a lot going on in Philly and the world of sports, a lot going on in Washington. There you see Vance and Johnson awaiting the King's arrival. Other members of Congress mingling as they await King Charles. That takes off at 3. We won't be here because it's the end of Live Impact News. We hope to see everybody on 13 News Now at 4 or back here tomorrow. We appreciate you watching.